My name is Ryan Chapman, and I'm the Wellhead Protection Coordinator at the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality. During this webinar, I will briefly explain the purpose of the Wellhead Protection Program, give you a general overview of the program, including all 6 steps, and then we will wrap up with some funding options and success stories. So let's get started with a few quick stats. Over 85% of Nebraskans drink groundwater, and if we get rid of the residents in northern Omaha, approximately 99% of us drink groundwater. There are over 1,300 public water systems in the state of Nebraska. This includes community water systems such as Lincoln and Scottsbluff, for example. Then there's non-transient, non-community water systems, which would be like businesses with their own wells and over 25 employees. And then finally, transient non-community systems, which are like rest stops along interstates or campgrounds at state parks and such. There are over 600 community water, public water systems. And the map of the background there of the slide shows the 5,000 plus public water system wells throughout the state. The purpose of Nebraska's Wellhead Protection Program is to protect groundwater that is the source of drinking water. And by that, we mean both the quality and the quantity of groundwater. A wellhead protection plan, then, is essentially a guide to manage potential contaminants. It's to plan for emergencies in the future and to inform the public of what's going on. There are 6 steps to Nebraska's Wellhead Protection Program. These include first, identifying or delineating an area to focus on. Second, completing an inventory of potential contaminant sources. Third, managing these potential contaminants. Fourth, planning for emergencies. Fifth, planning for the future. And last, but more of something that's kind of woven throughout all 6 steps, is a public education and participation. We'll start with the first step, which is delineating the wellhead protection area. Wellhead protection area delineation is determining the necessary size, shape, and boundaries for a protection zone around drinking water wells. These zones are based on what is called a 20-year time of travel, or a good way to think about this is where the water located at now that we will be drinking 20 years from now. This protection zone is based upon principles of groundwater movement. So why do we make these maps? We make these maps primarily because we need to define an area to focus our efforts in. This can include allocating financial resources to that particular area, writing ordinances for that particular area, and even simple stuff like educating residents and landowners within that area. The Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality delineates close to 99% of these areas, but natural resource districts and consultants are also utilized to delineate wellhead protection areas. So here's the delineation process in a nutshell. First, information is gathered including hydrogeologic and geologic information, such as groundwater flow direction and velocity, and aquifer characteristics. Average pumping volumes and well construction information is also gathered. This information is then entered into a computer model where flow paths are modeled. The model is then run under different scenarios, and a boundary is drawn around the modeled 20-year flow lines and extended out to the nearest property lines. Eventually, this is then checked and compared with historic boundaries and flow directions, and then maps are sent out to various agencies and respective public water systems with the boundaries included. We update wellhead protection area boundaries and publish associated maps as wells are added, as wells are decommissioned or pumpage changes, and as better hydrogeologic and geologic information is obtained. We are also updating maps delineated with older methods. To request a copy of a map or to have your map redrawn, please contact us. I'm going to skip over this pretty quick as I'm going to show our contact information near the end of this presentation again. The second step of the program is to conduct an inventory of potential contaminant sources. The purpose of this is to map out and document all potential sources of contamination within the wellhead protection area. A few examples of potential contaminant sources could be things like chemical storage and transfer facilities, pit toilets like the outhouse shown in the picture there, waste treatment facilities, septic tanks, there's wells and cemeteries and gas stations, and a whole other slew of other potential contaminants. Here's an example of a contaminant source inventory recently completed in Burwell, Nebraska. As you can see, it's simply a map with numbered dots on it associated with potential contaminant sources. And then the spreadsheet displays some more information and notes on each potential contaminant. Here's a blow-up of the map and spreadsheet. And as you can see, we've included things like gas stations and pit toilets, mechanic shops, livestock confinements, and there's a variety of several other potential contaminant sources listed there. So thinking back to our previous example of Burwell, it took several hours of prep time and about half a day of driving around and maybe another full day in the office compiling the information and completing the maps. So that may seem like quite a bit of time, probably several days there, but there is help available. Regionally, Midwest Assistance can help you. On a statewide level, we can help the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality. Locally, your natural resource districts will often assist you. There's nonprofits that can assist, like the Nebraska Rural Water Association and the Groundwater Foundation. The other option is hiring a consultant to complete this. And you can even hire a local teacher to do it over the summer. And then typically they'll take their experiences back to their class. So it's kind of a nice thing that they can then share with their class of what's going on. There are several databases also available to get you started. The Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality, we have all our permitted facilities on there that can give you an idea of some of the stuff. The Nebraska, or the State Fire Marshal, has above ground and underground and hazardous waste storage tanks. The Nebraska Department of Natural Resources has water wells. They have a database of water wells. And the Nebraska Oil and Gas Commission also has a database of all their oil and gas wells. There's also a guidance document available for doing a contaminant source inventory. The guidance document is titled The Contaminant Source Inventory Guidebook for Nebraska. I will once again go over the entities that can help that we just went through and some of the guidance documents available towards the end of the presentation. Here's an example of a historic map from the 1900s. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's an old well within the city. Within City Hall there, that includes an engine and then a gas storage tank to run the well. So as you can see there, there's some potential contaminant sources there that we should probably place on a map then that would be worthwhile investigating later to see if there's any lingering effects from these problems. So here's, I guess, an historic example of some historic land uses that we could still be seeing problems with today. The third step is managing these previously identified potential contaminant sources. So what this means is identifying strategies that will have the greatest effect on reducing the threat of contamination to drinking water. There's a variety of ways to do this, which can include things like local ordinances, city and or county zoning regulations, education efforts, inspections, can do some agreements with other entities to regulate potential contaminants or threats to water supply quality issues, do things like closing abandoned wells, and even implementing best management practices on rural and even urban wellhead protection area land. fourth step involves planning for emergencies. This involves making long-term and short-term plans for well failures due to natural disasters. So this might involve having a generator for your well if the electricity goes out, or having agreement with a neighboring water system to truck water to your water system in the event of a natural disaster. The fifth step is future planning. Essentially, this means planning for new wells. This is needed for several reasons. For instance, if your community is growing, or if you have old wells that need replacing, or if your wells get contaminated. So the most important part of this step is to get community leaders and water operators thinking about where they would place a new well in the future. And then during that process, while keeping in mind potential contaminants that may influence the water quality, thinking about water availability in a particular area, and thinking about even existing wells that are in that particular area that might not allow you to place a new community water well. And then finally, who owns the land for where we think we're going to put our new well, next year or 20 years down the road? And is that land maybe going to be for sale in the future? Should we think about setting aside some money to purchase that land? And then all the way to, can the community buy enough land to effectively manage the potential contaminants close to that well? The last step is public education. For a state-approved plan, you're required to have the plan available to the public for review for at least 30 days. You're also required to set aside a time for public comment regarding the plan at a regularly scheduled meeting. And finally, you're required to publish an official notice regarding options for public review and comment, and notify the public of when the controlling entity will be voting on the plan. We also suggest making handouts or brochures or posters for the public, putting ads in newspapers, things like that, just keeping the public informed of what is going on, enlisting any volunteers for help, and all sorts of things like that. And then most importantly, involving the public throughout the entire process, involving them from just keeping them informed, all the way to helping out, maybe physically writing the plan or doing a contaminant source inventory, or thinking of ideas to manage those potential contaminants. So it's something that should be incorporated throughout the entire process. Once again, help is available from national and regional entities, such as the Groundwater Foundation can help out, and Midwest Assistance, from state entities such as the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality and the Nebraska Rural Water Association. Help is also available locally from your natural resource districts. And another option, of course, is hiring consultants. We have newsletters available, which are essentially short publications on a variety of issues, from simply developing a wellhead protection plan to strategies for managing drought to managing nitrate contamination. There's also an example plan called Bug Hollow that's available, and you can kind of just go through that plan and tailor it to your own needs, your own specific community situation there. There's another publication describing options for managing contaminants. It goes through a wide variety of what some other towns have done to manage their contaminants. So you can go through there and pick something out that you think would work great for your town. And all of these are available on our website, or you can contact us to get a hard copy of these. Funding, there are several funding options available, and this can be funding from paying somebody to physically write your wellhead protection plan, all the way to on-the-ground management practices, or those best management practices, pivot conversion and things like that for ag areas, and rain barrels for urban areas, and stormwater gardens, and all kinds of different things that could be done. There's the 319 program, which is for non-point source pollution. which is things like reducing nitrogen application or converting flood irrigated fields to pivot irrigated. Another funding options are source water grants. These are for projects that provide long-term benefits to drinking water quality, quantity, education, and or security. The Environmental Trust is another funding option that offers grants for a wide variety of activities. And there's also local sources. Typically this comes in the form of in-kind help. For example, an NRD might give a presentation to the City Council on wellhead protection, or they might even assist you in writing a plan. So lots of options out there. If you have any questions, just give us a call, and we'd be more than happy to assist you through the process and kind of strategize some ways that would best work for your particular needs. Success stories. Currently, there are 88 state-approved wellhead protection plans. There are several communities using the wellhead protection program option to address an administrative order for nitrates. This is essentially if you go over 10 parts per million on nitrates in a community well, you have to quit using that well. And with this option, if you have a state-approved plan and follow some various other guidelines, Health and Human Services will let you serve that drinking water up to 15 parts per million. There are some restrictions in there for you have to serve different sources of water to vulnerable populations and stuff like that. But that is an option that usually will buy some communities time and sometimes quite a bit of time, maybe even long enough for them to get below the 10 parts per million on their water supply wells there. And there's also an increased awareness of groundwater as a resource worth protecting. For instance, there are several communities doing quite a bit in regards to on-the-ground activities to protect their groundwater. Once again, I'll mention converting flood irrigation to pivot irrigation, things like working with farmers to reduce nitrogen applications, involving some smart technology there to help farmers out with their nitrogen applications so they know exactly what they're putting on and what they already have on their ground. And then, working with residents to install rain barrels and rain gardens and simply reducing fertilizer applications even in urban areas. I would like to thank everybody for listening. Here's my contact information, and please do not hesitate to contact me for anything. I'd be more than happy to help you out however I can. Thank you, and have a great day.